Hello and welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home. I'm Marlo Artis, proud principal of Craven Early College and the moderator of the program. Tar Heel Teachers at Home is an interview series focused on engaging North Carolinians in conversations around education. Each week, I'm happily joined by a wonderful panel of educators, each one representing a particular subsection of education. We'll start our introductions with our elementary school co-host.
Hello, my name is Amy Tart, and I teach 5th grade ELA at Sunset Avenue in Clinton City Schools.
Hello, my name is Camille Newman, and this is my 26th year in education. I had 23 years as a middle school ELA teacher. I had 3 years as a district instructional coach, and currently I am in my first year as an assistant principal in public schools of Robeson County.
Hello, I'm Adina Watkins. I am the Wilkes County Teacher of the Year, and I taught middle school for 20 years. And I've been at Wilkes Early College High School for the past 9 years, and I teach 9th grade English.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arisha Smalls. I have been in education for 15 years, and I am the AIG Program Coordinator for Cumberland County Schools.
Girl, I thought you were 15. We have a wonderful panel of North Carolina educators join us for this conversation, and we're so excited. For this episode of Tar Heel Teachers at Home, we are chatting with Kimberly Jones, who was recently named the 2023 Burroughs Wellcome Fund North Carolina Teacher of the Year. Kimberly is an English teacher at the Chapel Hill High School. Kim, welcome back to Tar Heel Teachers at Home.
Thank you so much, Marlo. It's a pleasure to be with you all again.
We're so excited to be with you. I mean, we're filming this episode on Monday, April the 17th, and Kim was named the Teacher of the Year for our state on Friday the 14th. So this is fresh off the presses, and we're so excited to have this exclusive interview with Kim. So Kim, take us into Friday's luncheon. So Catherine Truitt, our state superintendent, is on the stage, and she's giving shout outs to everybody who was recognized as Regional Teacher of the Year, and says so many great things. Talked about how you really make sure your students have agency in the classroom. And I thought that was so powerful. And then she starts to give some descriptions of our new state Teacher of the Year. At what point, Kim, did you realize that she was talking about you?
When she said Mrs. Kimberly Jones, I serve with an exceptional team of regional teachers of the year. And even though she was mentioning portions of my platform, talking about equity, talking about student agency, talking about increasing student choice, so many of my colleagues from across the state who are regional teachers of the year shared similar best practices, shared similar educational passions. So honestly, it was when she said Mrs. Kimberly, because there was only one Kim in the finalists, that I knew it was me. You know, there was a point where I was like, that could be me, but it was certainly not a given until she said my name, because again, my colleagues on the regional teacher team are outstanding, and they all promote so many facets of what we know makes good teaching and makes for successful students.
You're absolutely right. And we're so fortunate to have so many outstanding educators being recognized as Regional Teachers of the Year. And I know that you all will make an exceptional team. Now, when you approached the stage, you really gave a great testimony in terms of your experience and your journey. Tell us, Kim, about Little Kim. Little Kim in Irwin, North Carolina. What was school like for Little Kim?
School was exciting. School was something that, and we understand, like, there is like the system of school and then there's learning, and those don't always go together. You know, we can learn anywhere. We learn at church, we learn at home. And when you're little, you come to school, and school is just another place where you're, but I loved the routines of school. I knew, like, this was my desk, this was my place, this was my cubby hole. I knew on Mondays we had this special, and on Wednesdays we had this special. I knew on this day we went to the library and how many books I could get. And I loved the certainty of that. Having that solid foundation, having teachers who had really clear routines, gave me comfort, but it also allowed me to explore. When I went to the library, I knew I could pick out these kinds of books, or I would talk to my mom about what sort of book I was going to read this week, or if we were in specials. My music teachers and art teachers made it clear where we were heading. And so I had time to think about what I wanted to do and start to ask my teacher questions. So school was always exciting. It was always fun. My mom has some of my early report cards. And even though I didn't know I was going to be a teacher, I think maybe some of my teachers did. I was a student, my grades were never an issue, but there was a lot of Kimberly talks out of turn. Kimberly attempts to aid her peers even when they don't ask for that assistance. Kimberly attempts to give instruction after I've already given instruction. I wanted everybody to be on the same page. And if the teacher was like, hey, we need to pick up a blue crayon and you had a purple, I would be like, Marla, she said we needed blue. You can't have it. She'd be like, Kim, I got this. I know, but you said we needed blue and he had purple. In my adolescent, in my childish mind, that was me helping my teacher. But I was really fortunate to have teachers who nourished that, who gave me opportunities to lead as a young student, to share what I knew, to help people who actually did need help. And I began to love that feeling. I loved the feeling of helping my peers get it. That light bulb moment that we all know as teachers. Even as a child, I realized how fun that was to help someone get it. Childhood Kim was eager and excited, and she was nourished by incredible public school teachers in Harnett County schools.
I love that. You just really gave such a great testament about the great work happening in Harnett County schools and all of the great districts across our state. So Kim, my last question before we turn over to the co-host, how did you then make the decision that you were going to dedicate your life to education and be a public school educator?
I was in my junior year at Wake Forest. I had gone in knowing I would be an English major. I was always passionate about English literature. But at first I thought I was going to go to law school. And I had the opportunity to spend some summers with attorneys, with judges at various levels. And it was incredibly fulfilling as a learning experience. But it also helped me learn that I did not want to go into the law. I had the utmost respect for how hard they worked and how important that job was. But I very quickly discovered it was not my passion. And at Wake Forest, I was fortunate enough to be back on campus with a mentor of mine, Dr. Joseph Milner. He had been the director of the Governor's School East program for many years. I was fortunate enough to go to Governor's School as a student. And that was the first kind of opportunity that sparked my understanding of what teachers truly could be, how it wasn't necessarily as sort of straight-laced and routine as the typical high school was. At Governor's School, I was learning from and with people who were very different than I was, and my world was being changed by the ideas that were being presented. And while I was at Governor's School, Dr. Milner, I was focused on Duke University. That was where I was going to go. That was where I was going to study. And one day he walked past me and he had sat in on one of my classes and he said, "Hey, Kim, let me talk to you for a minute. Where are you thinking about going to college?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go to Duke." Now, I was thinking about going to Duke. I was going to go to Duke. And he was like, "It's a fine institution, great school. Have you ever considered Wake Forest?" And I was like, "No, because I'm going to Duke." And he was like, "Well, that's wonderful. But if you are willing to open your options, I think we could use minds like yours at Wake Forest." And for him to validate not only my academic potential, but to affirm my unique voice was really powerful. And it was enough to drive me to look at Wake that here is this man who's the director of this program who sat in on my classes, and he listened to me and he thought my voice, my thoughts, my perspective had a place at that institution. So my junior year, I started thinking about education, and senior year, I had a really long talk with Dr. Milner in his office about teaching and about the graduate program at Wake. And at the end of that conversation, I knew I was going to pursue a graduate degree at Wake and get my master's in education, and that I wanted to teach. I saw not only what Dr. Milner, but what had so many other teachers had done for me, and I wanted the opportunity to do that for other students, for other young people.
Wow, that is exceptional. And Kim earned her bachelor's degree and her master's degree from Wake Forest University, and she's been on the faculty at the Chapel Hill High School since 2006, and we're so excited to chat with her. She's Kimberly Jones, the 2023 Burroughs Wellcome Fund North Carolina Teacher of the Year. What questions do we have for her?
Kim, I have a question. I have a real question, but before I get to that, these flowers in the background, are those from your award ceremony on Friday?
They are. They are.
They're so beautiful.
Thank you.
I kept looking, I'm looking at you talking, but I'm like, oh, those flowers are so pretty. You started the show or opened up the show talking about your own personal educational experience, and you've been quoted as saying that you've designed your classroom to have low floors and high ceilings. Is that something that you have experienced and you want to now give to students? Is that something you feel like you didn't have and you want to give to students? Where do you think that comes from?
That definitely comes from practice, and I cannot claim ownership of the phrase. I was at a PD probably 15 years ago. I was early in my career, and I heard a veteran educator talk about the concept of having high ceilings for their students. And I had outstanding teachers, but we know that education changes. And in the early 80s, we had a lot of testing and tracking. We had, the blue reading group and the red reading group and the yellow reading group. And that often determined what kind of opportunities, what kind of challenges students were given. And when I considered high ceilings, I also thought about, I want every child to feel like they have a high ceiling. And that ceiling may be different for different students based on their abilities or their needs. But I wanted to ensure that I was giving really critical, meaty, thoughtful curriculum to students at every level. But I knew that, like we all do, that takes differentiation. And sometimes when you present a complex text to a student cold, they kind of remove themselves from contention of thinking that they can understand it or that this book is for them. If I hand Oedipus Rex to my first semester students, some of them will go, well, that's Greek and it's old and I'm looking at it, it's written in poetry and that's not for me. But if we start with, how do you know who you are? What if you didn't know who you were? How would you figure that out? How important is truth in your life? When we start with those easy, accessible kind of universal questions, and I pull them in, I can then say, we're going to read this play about this guy who's hunting for the truth, who's seeking the truth, and is going to find it in the most unexpected and tragic way. I've removed some of those artificial barriers that sometimes the text or even sometimes the students create for themselves. And so that's what I mean by that concept of a low floor. I'm going to start with the least common denominator, where every student feels that they can assess the idea and build from there. And we're all going to end up reading Oedipus, but we're going to start at this place where it's a universal concept that we already all understand. So students feel confident to try with those more difficult texts.
My follow-up question to that, I think, would be, do you think or do you feel that you've had a little Kim Jones in your class?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know I have. I know I have. Without question. I don't know if he or she will or they will end up in the classroom, but I've been teaching 17 years now, and I have been blessed and fortunate to reach the point in my career where I'm hearing from some of those early students who are not necessarily going into education, but they're writing back about tasks that I had them perform at 15 and 16. I had a student reach out a couple of months ago, and he talked about my having them write a poem when we were reading, I think, Lord of the Flies. And while he may not remember the plot of Lord of the Flies, he wrote in his note, and it just really touched my heart. He was like, having that assignment in your class taught me that I could do difficult things that I didn't think I could do. And you didn't let me get out of it, and you didn't let me work around it. You didn't give me a pass. You made me do it, and it made me realize I could do difficult things. And so while I don't know if I've taught another Teacher of the Year, I do know that I've taught people who are challenging things in our world, attempting to make them better, and believing that they can take on difficult tasks and they have the capability to meet them. And that is probably the most fulfilling thing. As wonderful as Friday was, as life-changing as Friday was, as affirming and validating, those kinds of messages are the most validating.
Kim, I
So one of the
noticed.
things, oh,
No,
go ahead.
I noticed when you were talking, I was reading about you being an AVID program director. Can you tell folks who maybe don't know anything about that, the benefits of using AVID to help all students?
So AVID is a national program. AVID is an acronym that stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. And I am very, very fortunate to be a co-coordinator of the Chapel Hill High AVID program with Ms. Joanne McClellan. And she was actually the first teacher in the state of North Carolina to create an AVID program. Chapel Hill High has the oldest AVID program in the state. Ms. Joanne got trained back in the 90s. Chapel Hill is an incredible school district. But even at that point, we had an achievement gap and we had opportunity gaps. And Ms. McClellan saw AVID as an avenue to take those students that are in the middle. As you know, students who, it's not a remediation program. AVID is a structured program that teaches students those school skills, the ones that very often students kind of come in and we just assume they're going to have: organization, collaboration, inquiry, those sorts of things. AVID systematizes those skills, and they allow us to take students who are in the middle, that BC student who with just a little bit more structure, with a little bit more focused intervention, could very easily take honors and AP courses. They just need those supports because they've either never challenged themselves that way, or those kinds of executive functioning skills don't come naturally to them. And so over the course of my 17 years, I've had the opportunity to grow from someone teaching just students in an AVID cluster in my English class to being an AVID elective teacher, and now co-coordinating the program. And over those 17 years, I have seen scores of students succeed, be admitted into college, graduate, and even some of them come back now to talk to our students about the difference that AVID made. I think it's an exceptional program that is based on effective practice for all students. At Chapel Hill High, you'll see things like Cornell notes or Socratic seminars being used in AVID classrooms, in science classrooms, in math classrooms, because those skills are good for all students. And when teachers incorporate those kinds of practices, all students rise.
Thank you.
Tim, one of the things I heard about you is that you are just an absolute champion for your students. So I wanted to ask, how do you form those relationships with them to let them know that you're in their corner and empower them?
I think it starts on day one with being enthusiastic about what you're doing. I love teenagers. I've been teaching 15 and 16-year-olds, English 10 sophomores in some combination since my first day in the classroom. And I love that teenagers in particular, young people, are at that point where they're starting to question authority. They're starting to question the world. They're looking for the falsehoods. I often say, and with a bit of a pejorative term, that teenagers have the best BS meter of anybody I've ever met. They know if you're real. And so from day one, I try to be real. I greet them with a smile. I tell them how much I love English. I tell them I'm going to invite them every day to my English party. They don't have to love it, but I'm going to try to validate its usefulness to them. Whatever their goals and dreams are, I'm going to try to explain how the ability to construct a sound sentence is part of that. I try to take into account their interest once I learn what they do. I am at wrestling matches and football games and band concerts. I want them to know that I care about the things that they're passionate about. And I think when kids authentically see that you care about them as people, those kids will run through a wall for you when they know that, like, your disappointment is not tied to a grade, but who they are as people. That, if I'm sad with you, it's because I saw you make a poor choice, not because you failed a test. If I'm pleased with you, it's not because you happen to get an A. It's because I saw you model kindness to someone else, or I saw you challenge yourself. And I love that. I love how earnest and authentic they are. And I try to match that. I try to match that energy. And they get that my enthusiasm is real. And ultimately, by second quarter, by second semester, they also see that my concern and my care for them is real. And once they know you care about them, the human being, they will meet those academic goals. They will rise to those standards. And you explain why things are becoming more rigorous. You explain why we're moving up, or why certain scaffolds are going away, because you've built these skills and now it's time to build other ones. And when that trusting relationship is there, they're willing to trust you with that kind of academic vulnerability that has to happen in any class for kids to grow.
Thank you so much. That's so true. And then follow up, since I'm an ELA nerd myself, what is your favorite text to teach?
Oh, that's so hard.
I know that's a hard one.
That's so hard. I will say, in addition to teaching my ELA, for probably the last 12 to 14 years of my career, I've leaned into Holocaust education. And that's where a lot of my PD and my sort of personal teaching and my teacher leadership has come in Holocaust education. So probably my favorite text to teach is Night, and the supplemental text that I use to tell that story. And I think, given what we're seeing in current society, it's even more needed. And the lessons that text teaches, and the warnings that it gives about our treatment of our fellow man are timeless, and it still resonates with kids, even more so now, given the fact that we have seen a very dark and unfortunate reemergence of open anti-Semitism in certain places in our society.
We just became best friends. I don't know if you know that or not, but
Thanks, Amy.
I was an ELA teacher as well, so we have a great love for ELA here, your biography and that curriculum, advocate for the equitable access to rigorous courses and college preparation for all students. Now that you are the North Carolina Teacher of the Year, how will you ensure that district curriculum leaders continue to ensure that all students have equitable access to all resources and technology, and to make sure, as you say, learning from the same page, and that there are no achievement or opportunity gaps. How will you ensure that now that you are the state teacher of the year?
One of the things that I think I'm going to be fully forthright. I teach in an outstanding district that still has an achievement gap. So we haven't arrived. I think the resource gaps that exist in communities are a significant factor in the achievement gaps that we see in schools. I'm really fortunate, as I mentioned earlier, to be working on a team of regional teachers who our plan is to have a multifaceted approach, from everything from addressing student hunger. A kid can't learn when they're hungry, to increasing joy in the classroom. Kids are not willing to take the academic risk necessary to be vulnerable with their teachers and admit the things they don't know and seek that extra help if they don't feel safe in a joyful environment. I have an incredible colleague from the Northeast whose passion is extending STEM opportunities to students. And I think the achievement gap in particular is going to take, closing that gap is going to take a multifaceted approach. I think everything from my own personal passion of making sure that curriculum, to touch on your question, is culturally relevant to students. I think that there are many ways to teach our standards, and we have to be cognizant of who's in the room, of what their world looks like, what their realities are, and start our instruction by acknowledging that reality and incorporating into how we teach. And so I think for me, my own sort of spoke in the wheel that's going to be the 2023 Teacher of the Year team is going to be working with and listening in local communities to learn more about who is in those classrooms and how do we take the realities of our students, the talents of our students, and use that in our first step to getting that academic and proficiency parity that we need. How do we begin to, I'm not talking about overhauling. If someone came into my class and said, Kim, you need to change everything you're doing, you stop listening. But how do you take what you're doing and begin to look at your methods, your practices, and go, what are the sort of unknown barriers that's keeping my kids from understanding these concepts? How can I present it in another way? How can I change how students are doing work? Maybe I can use blended models where there's small instruction here, group instruction here, remediation here, all in the same room. We're all working on the same thing, but working differently, as opposed to one size fits all. We're just all in this tent together, and I'm going to keep doing it until, it finally reaches, the kid on the left side of the room or the kid who's struggling. I think that there are ways that teachers can take the best practices that they're employing now, but also be thoughtful about how to make them more specific to meet the needs of the kids in the room. In my ELA classroom, I can talk about English because I know it'll look different in different classes. That means if I've got core text, if I've got something like Night or Lord of the Flies, and I know that that's a core text for my district, what are the supplemental pieces that I'm using to bring my kids in? I've got a significant population of Latinx students. Where's the Hispanic voice in my classroom? And not only where is that voice, how is it presented? I've got lots of African American students, but if the only stories that they're hearing about themselves and their culture are grounded in trauma or oppression, my kids are going to check out. Where is joy? I have queer students. I have students who of various immigration statuses. I have students who are refugees from war-torn nations. How am I honoring and affirming their identities through the curricular choices I'm making. And I think that's one of the ways that we get students to buy in so that we can then work more actively on some of those academic skills. But if I'm already struggling with something and I don't see its relevance to myself, I'm not going to put in that extra work to get better at something I don't care about or something that isn't, germane to my life or, in my opinion, even applicable. So I think one of the instructional things we can do to begin to address that achievement gap is to make sure that our curriculums are culturally relevant and responsive to the students in our classroom. And that's going to look different all over the state. In some places, our diversity is not racial, but it's socioeconomic. And if I'm teaching to a middle class or upper SES, even some of the references I may be using when I'm teaching don't have relevance to students who haven't had travel opportunities or, haven't experienced certain things that we might consider cultural norms. They may have never been to a museum. They may have never been, depending on where they are, if they're in the mountains, they may have never been to the beach. If they're at the beach, they may have never been to the mountain. So thinking about who's in my room and how I can take what they know to get them to where they need to be.
That was very profound. That
Well,
was very profound.
I was like, I hope I'm answering her question. I
Yes,
did.
yes, you did. And this is what the gist of what I got from that is that any teacher in any classroom can still go with the core curriculum. But however, with those supplemental texts, things that we use to enhance what we've already taught can be culturally relevant so that the students can see this applies to me.
I think, yes. And I think in time, and it's a big ask. So that's why I say start with a supplemental. But I absolutely think in time it can and should be that we reevaluate what the core is. It's not, I don't want it, I certainly would never want it to be the case that someone says, I'm thinking that, cultural relevancy is an add-on. It is not. But we have to start somewhere. And so if we can start with, this core that may be set by somebody else or maybe approved, by a school board, that is what it is. But we have opportunities to introduce what we believe is important. I fundamentally believe that what you learn determines what you believe is worth learning. And if you never learn positive facts or you never get positive perspectives about yourself, your culture, your region, how you live, if it's agrarian, if it's urban, if that's not validated by school, we are doing a disservice, like fundamentally, to the spirits and the hearts of these children. I think every child deserves to see their world affirmed and validated and welcomed in what they are learning in school. And the onus is on us as teachers to make that happen and make it relevant no matter where we are in the state.
And connected to that, Kim, in terms of seeing yourself, one of the pieces of your platform is around the need to really diversify the teaching force. What are some of your ideas of what North Carolina can do to make certain that we do have teachers that are representative of our student population?
I think it starts early. I think it starts with all of the best practices that we've kind of talked about here. I think number one, students have to have positive experiences with school themselves to want to be a part of it. I think there are some, but there are very few teachers that you find that hated every moment of school. And even if they did, they found a teacher that they loved. And they were like, I want to be that for somebody else. So I think first thing, we have to make school a welcoming, joyful, healthy place for students. It's very hard to see yourself being a part of an institution you don't feel like you belong in. And so I think if we change how all students in general feel welcome, feel seen, feel affirmed in school, you're going to light that spark in people. Number two, I think teacher cadet programs are amazing. I think that there are students who are on the verge of maybe wanting to be teachers. If those kids are nurtured, if we keep equity at the heart of what those programs look like, I think in addition, we have incredible. North Carolina has a storied history of historically Black colleges and universities. And I think being intentional about reaching out to our HBCUs, meeting with those college sophomores that are on the verge of declaring a major, and talking about education as a meaningful profession, a meaningful way to improve the future, to grow as an individual, we can see those numbers grow. We will naturally begin to see those numbers grow, but we have to foster it, facilitate it, encourage it amongst the students in our classrooms now.
Any other pressing questions for Kim?
I have one. I was going to ask, a lot of our struggles with students having access to some opportunities is lack of information. How does your school, or what are some promising practices that you have to help really inform students of the advanced opportunities that are available at your school?
So I'm very fortunate to work alongside teachers who are willing to go where kids are. I can speak for even, and this is a different kind of equity, and I want to make sure that I'm speaking of equity in broad terms. Our automotive teacher, for example, has an incredible program. His program is so rich and so full. He doesn't have planning periods. He teaches 7 periods straight because the demand is so high. But he had noticed that there were not a lot of female students in his program. And so he decided to host these lunch and learns and create a female automotive lunch series for girls who were interested in going, like, what happens in that building. Even if they don't end up taking the automotive class, they can come to those lunch and learns and learn how to check their tire pressure, how to check their oil. So he saw, I've got a successful program, but there's a significant portion of my school that is not availing themselves of it. How do I reach out to those students intentionally? In terms of, so that's one thing. I think looking at who I am underserving and reaching out and appealing directly to those students to let them know that you care, that you want to grow, that they are welcomed in your program. AVID, for example, we host a number of parent nights. We have opportunities for parents to come in and get assistance with FAFSA. We have a designated AVID counselor who can meet with parents to talk about registration and registration choices. We have a wonderful office of translators. We have students who speak a multitude of languages. And so making sure that district information comes out in multiple languages. Another thing I love is the fact that we offer conferences during the day and in the evening, trying our best to meet parents where they are, to be responsive to community need, offering virtual or in-person options. I think it's important for every school district to, like I said, sort of look at who you're serving and who you're underserving, and being specific in, we can't, like I think I mentioned earlier, I don't think we can rely on a one size fits all. Well, this is when parent night is, and this is when open house is, and you're either there or you're not there. Making community partnerships. Marlo worked with Blue Ribbon, and so how often that meant going to, like in Chapel Hill, going to Hargrave Center where the kids are. Working with the Boomerang program, which allows students who are experiencing OSS or even ISS to have structured support, going to those community partners that are already meeting parents' needs, that already trust them. Going to our local Latino community center, our Burmese community center, using organizations that have already done that trust work and allowing them to be validators, because a lot of people have they have justifiable reservations about working with schools, either based on their own experience or the fact that we are a bit of a government entity. And that makes some communities and some parents nervous, or they feel kind of disenfranchised by it. So partnering with organizations that have done that real valid trust work and proving ourselves to those communities. And those are some things that we're trying in Chapel Hill. And like I said, I love where I teach. I'm super proud of everything that we get right. But I know that we, like so many other places in the state, still have work to do. But these are some things that I'm seeing both in district leadership and in our community that are working, that are helpful.
Kim, have you started to wrap your mind around the fact that you will not be at Chapel Hill High School next year?
Y'all, I cried today. I was I was at an amazing teacher leadership conference down in Charlotte, and it was the 2020 Teacher of the Year team, the 2021-22, and then our team, the 2023 team. And I was sitting at a table eating lunch with some colleagues, and I was talking about some invitations that I had received, and I was like, yeah, I haven't responded to any of them because I have to see what my schedule is like in the fall. And I realized I'm not going to have a class schedule. And I'm not ashamed. Y'all, I started crying. It's the first time in 17 years that I'm not buying a plan book in August. Like, I'll have a planner, but it's not going to have my big squares of like, this is my unit and here are my quizzes and these are the benchmarks. And it's going to be incredibly new. I'm very fortunate. I'm very, very fortunate. Leah Carper, the 2022 Teacher of the Year, Eugenia Floyd, another CHCCS teacher, our 2021 teacher, have been incredible mentors and resources, but they both acknowledge, they're like, it's different. And when you love what you do, like teachers do, seeing yourself in a different version of that job can be an adjustment. And so, no, I don't think I have fully wrapped my head around it, but I do know that the opportunity to get into classrooms across the state, to see the amazing things that public school teachers are doing, is gonna invigorate me on those days where I'm like, I miss lecturing, I miss that feedback, I miss the day that my kids all realize that Oedipus is married to his mom. There's gonna be other moments that I don't know about yet that are going to happen, that are going to feel as fulfilling. There's going to be those moments where I get to talk to beginning teachers and remember what that was like, both the stressors and the enthusiasm. I'm going to get to see, visit teacher ed programs and meet those students that are passionate about entering our profession. I'm going to have the chance to serve as an advisor to the state board and offer real classroom advice to our legislative leaders. And so while there's going to be a lot of things like the pep rallies, and I'm still going to be at Chapel Hill football games, I'm still gonna, once a Tiger, I'm still a Tiger. So I'm going to stay, in contact with my school and support my kids in as much as my schedule will allow. But it's definitely going to be a big adjustment, but I'm super excited about this very unique and, time sensitive window that I have to advance ideas that I think are important, but more importantly, to be, the cheerleader in chief of the incredible work that I know is happening every day in North Carolina public schools.
Well, as you are serving as that cheerleader in chief, we'll be cheering you on. And you certainly have a welcome invitation to come back to the program and tell the stories as you navigate the state. And Kim, we're so proud of you and so excited for you.
Thank you.
And
Thank y'all
excited
so
for
much.
our state. We're so excited for our state to have such a passionate educator serving as our 2023 Burroughs Wellcome Fund North Carolina Teacher of the Year.
Thank you.
We would also like to thank our audience so very much for watching our program. We hope that you will engage us on our social media platforms. Please follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TarHillTeachers. Please like our Facebook page, visit our website, tarhillteachers.com. And on all of our social media platforms, please use our hashtag #TarHillTeachers so we can find all of your great comments. We'd like to thank our wonderful group of panelists for joining us for this conversation: Amy Tart, Camille Newman, Adina Watkins, and Arisha Smalls. And once again, we'd like to thank our special guest for joining us. She is Kimberly Jones, the 2023 Burroughs Wellcome Fund North Carolina Teacher of the Year. Let's give her a round of applause. We're so happy for this. We look forward to seeing you next time on Tar Heel Teachers at